Good morning, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the No Limits Podcast. And I think it's time to reboot this podcast, kind of get back to basics, tell you what it was all about in the beginning, and kind of just reboot the whole thing. So let's go. Hello, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin. You can always reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Facebook. Wherever you go to do social media, I'm probably there. I thought I'd do something a little different today and kind of reboot this podcast and kind of tell you where it all started and where we've been and where we're going because it did change a lot. It started 4 years ago, and I'll get into exactly why it did. But by the way, if you're watching this podcast and something resonates with you, please share it. Actually, if nothing resonates with you, please share it anyway. It's one click. When you go to, if you see it on Facebook, just click share button and it'll go out. I need more listeners and I'd appreciate your help. If you watch it on YouTube, there's a subscribe button you can hit. Doesn't cost you anything, doesn't do anything bad for you. It's just a way for me to get more listeners and I would appreciate it. I'm getting a lot more traction with the podcast, so I kind of wanted to start over and kind of tell you where it started. So 4 years ago, and almost 200 episodes at this point, we were in Louisiana seeing my daughter, and it was right when COVID started. We went out there and wearing our masks and doing all the things you had to do during COVID. And my daughter suggested that I start a podcast, and I said, why? She says, well, you always have good advice. You're super upbeat, and I know the last couple podcasts have been a little bit of a downer, but like I said, I wanted to get back to the original thing. And I've always been one of these people that it's a can do attitude, right? Be a person of possibility, which I think everybody should be. It's the don't ask me how it can't be done, tell me how it can be done attitude. And I've always had that. And I felt like when I get around people, even to this day, I get people, a little bit motivated to get them excited about what their ideas are and try to encourage them to follow those ideas. So when it started, I didn't know what to do. I didn't even really know what a podcast was. I had heard of them, but I had never listened to one. So I came back to San Diego after our trip to Louisiana and got with a friend of mine that was very technical, young guy. And he kind of just said, look, it's super easy. All you do is get a camera, you know, look at the camera and talk into it and say whatever you want to say. There's no FCC regulations. There's no rules. So you can do anything you want. And podcasts at that time were huge, but now they're enormous. I mean, everybody's got a podcast now. So I started out with these four pillars. It was um, getting over limitations, which I think we all have some limitations in our life. And if we don't have limitations, we think of them on our own. Our worst enemy is our own mind. So, there's a lot of things I've learned over the past 4 or 5 years about technology, about podcasts, about AI, about all these different things. But even, 20 years ago, there was always these things I wanted to do, and I'd allow myself to let my own mind stop me from doing those things. I did some of them. I manifested some of those things, but I really wanted to get to a point where I was practicing what I'm preaching. And that point is now. I mean, it's today. I got to make a commitment to do some things that I've wanted to do. And I'm learning as much as I can how to do them. And man, have I learned a lot over the last 5 years about technology, about lighting, um, about sound. I went back to see my first podcast today, and it was so choppy and messy, and I didn't have a good camera, and the sound was bad, and the background was bad, and all those things. So I've come a long way, and I feel more comfortable doing it. And not that I didn't back then, but I feel really comfortable now just getting on here talking to myself, basically, or to a camera. And really, who I'm talking to is you. So if you have that dream, you have that aspiration, you want to go out and do something, yes, it seems like there's limitations, but there's really not in the whole scheme of things. So that was my first pillar. It was getting over these things that we create in our own mind. The second thing was telling your story. I've been to these conferences and seen people talk about storytelling marketing, which is super important. And a lot of companies do it, and we don't even realize they're doing it because we're so listening to their story. I know Steve Jobs one time was talking about Nike, and he says, Nike doesn't sell shoes, Nike sells the idea of athletes. They celebrate athletes. You being an athlete, or anybody, anything you're doing out there, they really sell an idea. And I did a podcast on storytelling, and there's kind of two stories in your life, and I'm certain that's the case. If I went back to when I was a child, and we were very poverty stricken, we didn't have much. It wasn't a horrible life. It's just that was just the facts of the matter. We just didn't have a lot of things. My dad wasn't doing great. He was had a little drinking problem and little job problem and these things that happened. And so my mom really was carrying the family on her shoulders. And we were alone a lot. It was that's that baby boomer thing. We were alone out playing sports or doing whatever. We didn't grow up in this, Leave It to Beaver neighborhood. We grew up in a very rough neighborhood, very tough. You had to learn how to fight early. And I could tell you all these negative things about my upbringing that would bring you down. Probably it was just a lot of just a lot of not great stuff. Or I could tell you the story of how much fun we had when we were kids and how we did learn how to do things and how we had this can-do attitude. I remember in our household, if you said I can't, my mom would call you out and say, I don't ever want to hear you say you can't do something. So we did all sorts of things. We educated ourselves, we learned things. We didn't have YouTube to learn how to work on an engine or a bicycle or anything like that. So we had to figure it out. And we were good at it. And it's something that's resonated with me my whole life. And if I needed to do something that I don't really want to pay for, I can figure out how to do it. Does it get done as an expert would do it? Probably not, but it gets done well enough. So there's these two stories. So I could tell this negative story that, would anybody would feel bad for me, or I could tell this positive story where I learned all these things and we moved to Poway and I met all these great people and I went to work and I was making money and I had cars and I had all these things and I was doing everything I wanted to do. And when I went to work, I moved up at work and I, took on leadership positions and did all these things. Those are the stories you want to tell people. And a lot of people that I know that have small businesses have this great story of how the small business started. And my story may be the same way as we keep moving along. In fact, it's going to be the same way because I'm going to make it that way. We're going to get over these problems, these, AI employment problems. We're going to get over this, or I should say, I am going to get over this COVID, whatever happened during COVID. It doesn't matter anymore. It's in the past. So, you know, as you're trying to fulfill these aspirations or get back to where you want to be or do something that you've never done and you've wanted to do, maybe think about writing that story, right? What could I do next that would be inspirational or impactful to somebody that was trying to do the same thing that I was trying to do? So that was the second thing, was storytelling. What kind of story are you telling people? The third thing was self-esteem, and I know that's kind of a generic term, but Jack Canfield, he's a kind of a motivational speaker. I was listening to him in the 2000s probably, or maybe even the 90s. And I remember him telling this story about a study that they did at Harvard where they interviewed all these little kids, like 4 and 5 year old kids. And these kids, their self-esteem, they were just bursting at the seams with confidence. And you'd ask them, what do you want to do? And they'd say, I want to be a football player, a baseball player, or a policeman, or a fireman, or a doctor. And they had all these huge dreams in their mind. And I know when my kids were growing up, they'd all take on these personas when they were having fun and playing together, where one would be a veterinarian and one would be a housewife or whatever that aspiration was to be. And it was never even they never even flinched. They just saw themselves doing this. And so Jack Canfield tells the story that, and then they did the same kids when they were 18 years old, and these kids were almost all suicidal. I mean, whatever happened in their life, whatever happened educationally, whatever happened, they were just depressed and didn't have these goals anymore because it looked like it was impossible to do. And when they were little kids, they didn't have that. And I tell you, we should take lessons from those kids, those little kids that have this great confidence and this great mind to see things differently than we see them. As we get older, we get cynical. We start finding the problems when there's no problem, when we create problems for ourselves. And we hurt our own self-esteem. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day that has a mother that's, older, and she's starting to get depressed. She's starting to feel like she's not needed or valued or, or wanted. And I get that because I work with seniors sometimes, and I get the same kind of feeling that they just feel like they're just a burden on their family. They're just a burden on whoever. And I got to tell you, I've mentioned this 100 times in my podcast. Every one of you listening, including me here, is a 1 in 400 trillion chance we were even born. We have an intrinsic value to society, to mankind, and to all these things. And the seniors out there see something AI can't replace. It can't replace those stories that these seniors can tell you. It can't replace these emotions they went through, especially the greatest generation, the generation before mine, on all these things they went through in war and the things they saw and the things they learned and experienced. Listen, we've been through the greatest technological revolution in the history of the world. Possibly it might be the biggest for baby boomers and the greatest generation and Gen X, or whatever the next one after me is. I think it's Gen X. We've gone from dialing phones to being able to talk to somebody in China in our car on the phone in real time. And now we have AI that's this plethora of information and help and guidance and things that we want to do. And so that self-esteem, I can see it with people, but you still have an intrinsic value to life, to the world. And we ought to be treating those seniors like that. We ought to be pumping them for information. I know I have about 10,000 photos in my garage of just random photos of the kids. Most of them are the kids and family memories and things like that. And my kids don't even want the photos. And there's a song, and I don't remember who the singer is, but it's a country song. And it says you should have seen it in color. And because these pictures of in the old days were only black and white. And this guy's singing about, wow, he's talking to his dad, I think, or grandpa, and he says, you should have seen this in color, when grandma and I were married and she was in this blue dress or whatever the thing is. And when I look at those photos, it brings a tear to my eye just to remember it takes me right back to those times. AI can't replace that. AI can't replace emotions. It can't replace that love. It can't replace any of those things. So believe me when I tell you, these seniors are suffering from self-esteem. There's a statistic out there that I hate even bringing up because it's just so sad that the number one group of people for suicide in the United States are men over 85. They just feel like they can't do the things they used to do, and it really hard on them. We need to be out reaching out to those seniors and taking care of them and making sure they understand that that we love them and that we appreciate what they've been through and what the stories they have to tell. That's a huge deal. You can see the self-esteem in teenagers these days compared to the way we were when we were teenagers. I was I was busting at the seams with self-esteem when I was a kid. And it could have been conceit, it could have been, just this persona that I made up on my own, whatever it was. I can tell you I was not depressed as a teenager. I could have been. Goes back to that storytelling. There were things going on in my life with my parents and my dad especially, who I lost when I was 19 years old, that could have drugged me down and made me not feel like I had any self-worth. But that wasn't the case because of my mother was so strong, was such a force in my life that gave me that confidence to get through. I mean, I was arrogant as hell, and I tell you, I'd rather be arrogant like that than just sit in a corner and cry. Because did I get knocked down a couple times? Hell yes, I did. That was when I grew up. That's what happened. But my self-esteem was just out of this world, and it's not really changed in my life. Although if you listen to the last two podcasts, and I had a friend call me and tell me that I said some things on the podcast he didn't think were a good idea. Well, I mean, you got to take the good with the bad. Sometimes, I got news for you. When you listen to my podcast, you're getting Ed Franklin light. You're not getting both barrels, because if I did that, I think my podcast would be more popular, but there'd be a lot less people talking to me or willing to talk to me. I got news for you. So anyway, I you just gotta drag yourself out of the gutter and go and get that self-esteem built back up. So that was my third pillar is a self-esteem. Excuses, man. I can make excuses to get out of anything. I force myself to get up at 3:30 in the morning about 4 or 5 days a week so I can go to the gym. There are days when I wake up and go, nope, it's not happening. And it really burns my ass when I do that because if I just wait 5 minutes, go downstairs, get a drink of lemonade or something, I would be fine. But there's days when I just can't drag myself out of bed. Today was my day off from the gym, and my legs are so sore I can hardly go up and down the stairs. But it's because I made excuses on leg day before. But excuses will kill you, and excuses you can make up in your mind. You can excuse yourself from doing anything. I got news for you. Your mind is your biggest enemy. And I'll repeat that a million times in my podcast that your mind is your worst enemy. You can talk yourself out of anything. And I see people do it all the time, and I do it all the time. It's that meal prepper that, when you go and I'm going to eat this and this and this today, and then that candy bar comes swinging by, or I don't eat really candy bars, but something like pretzels or something, excuse me, that I'll make an excuse that, well, I just won't eat this later. It's horseshit, really. It's all horseshit. Of course, if I didn't make any excuses, I'd probably have a six pack right there. But I do make excuses, and I don't have a six pack. It's in there somewhere. I just don't know where it is. So excuses, you can kill yourself with excuses. Now, the last one is kind of my fifth pillar of the podcast, and I kind of added this maybe in the last year. The reason I added this is because our family and many people that I know had some great traumas in their life. And I feel like at times I'm one of those people where people will open up to me and tell me about some trauma they've had in their life. And listen, I'm always willing to sit in the mud with those people and listen because I've had the same things or similar things happen in my life. And I would just want somebody to listen. I don't need advice. I don't need a plan. I don't need any. I know all that stuff. I know it's in my head. I go back to the excuses. If I don't, I know it. I might not do it because of those excuses. But I know that so many of us have suffered trauma in our life. And if you don't deal with it, if you don't at some point, I mean, sit in a corner and cry for 5 minutes a day, it will keep you from getting over those limitations. It could be your limitation, actually, the trauma. Look, I lost my dad when I was 19. My mom passed away in 1997. I've lost two grandchildren. I've lost a son-in-law, his brother, all these things. And it's not always about death. You guys know, because I've been pretty transparent in my life. I was married twice before I met Kit. Now, Kit and I have been together 26 years now, but those two divorces were traumatic, not only for me, not only for my ex-wife, but for our children. And I know both of them would have rather not had that happen, or we could have made it easier than it was. But you get anger, you're immature, you're doing all these things. So those traumas kept me from moving on sometimes, or at least delayed me from moving on at some time. I've had to deal with drug addicts. I've had to deal with a lot of different things in my life that, look, if I didn't have those things in my life, I'd probably be much better off than I am now. But I had to do what we had to do to make sure people were taken care of. So, like I said, I almost have 200 episodes out there. And when I started, I keep saying we, like there's a big production company here. It's not, it's me. Obviously, Kit is always a positive in my life because she listens to my podcast. She helps me, craft things just like that. So, but I've had authors on, I've had sales experts, if there's such thing, salespeople on, I've had companies on, I've had business coaches, I've had a plethora of different guests. And part of the No Limits moniker is that we have no limit on what we want to talk about. We can talk about anything we want. So I have some ideas that are coming up. Some of them are business related, and I think I might even separate those out. Where I'm not going to call it. It's still going to be the No Limits podcast, but it may be a moniker when it's a business thing. because I really need to concentrate on my sales lab and my public speaking and things like that. And you'll see a lot more um, data coming out about those ventures, I guess you'd call them. But it's been fun doing these podcasts, and I'm very comfortable doing them. Like I said, I'm figuring out ways to get the podcast bigger so more people will listen to it. Obviously, it comes down to content. The weird thing about podcasts is if you look on the internet and say what are the 10 most popular podcasts, of course Joe Rogan comes up. There's other ones, but I'll tell you a funny thing. This is how I just think this is really odd. Crime drama. People love to listen about crime drama, whether it's real or not real. Ray Bradbury said that he wrote fiction. This famous author wrote fiction because real life was unbelievable. And I'll never get into the real life stuff like I think would be popular because it incriminates people it's just not my style. I don't and because my keep in mind that my perception of the way things went and their perception of the way things went are generally 180 degrees out. So I would never want to put anybody in that position and make them feel like I've done that before and I've gotten called out on it. And it was not intentional. It was just what I remember how things went. And it's not that my memory's not good. It's just that's just humanity, right? We all have a version of what happened versus what really happened. And I'm going to keep doing this podcast, and I'm always open to ideas. If you guys want to, send me a message, a direct message me on LinkedIn or on Facebook. I'm always open to ideas. I'm always open to guests. If you guys know any celebrities help podcasts a lot because the people that are following the celebrity get exposed to my podcast, and something might click that they want to listen to me at another time without that guest. So any and all help is awesome. I was thinking about doing a live Facebook in kind of the spirit of Dear Abby and call it Dear Ed. But a lot of you, when I look at my demographics of who listens to this podcast, wouldn't even know who Dear Abby is. So we'll see. We'll see if that comes along. But listen, I'm always open to ideas. Um, so like I said, this podcast was really steered towards the younger generation to kind of help them avoid pitfalls that I had been through, maybe in relationships, maybe stretching out those, the beginning of their relationship or that what do you call it? Like the dating period because I think once you get to know people better, I think you're going to have better relationships if you take a lot longer to get to know each other. I was trying to give advice in work situations, same thing. I kept my mouth shut for a long time at work, like I should have. And I feel like I shouldn't have done that. That was such an oxymoron there. I wish I would have been a little bit more assertive professionally when I was younger, in my 20s, for instance, because I had some good ideas, but I just wanted to listen and find out what was going on. I think that kids, I don't care what generation you're talking about, you have a particular um, group of kids or young people that are incredibly intelligent, that have great ideas, that see things different than you, that could give you some great ideas about business and how you apply things, stuff like that. I said one time, and I usually referred to the guy that helped me get my podcast out, is everybody needs a mentor under 30, right? Especially for technology. It's so natural for kids these days to be technical because they grew up with it, whereas we had to relearn ourselves. I thought about doing a podcast on ethics. I think ethics in business is quite interesting. I've had it affect me in both ways, good and bad. And I remember when I was about 29 to 30 years old, I really, really wanted to be like an executive. Like I used to wear a suit and tie to work every day. And I had a lot of respect for these guys that were running companies, the CEOs, the sales managers, the, you know, CFOs, all these guys. And as I got to know them better, I started finding out that their ethical barometer was a little off. Not all of them, but many of them. I started to feel like I could get better information from a gang member or a Hell's Angel than I could um, a CEO because they'd sit there and tell you things right to your face and then turn around. And I have some great stories about ethics in business, and that might be one that comes up. Maybe that might be next week actually as I do that. And then I have some other ideas. So listen, I so much appreciate you listening to my podcast. And I don't want to belabor the point of what the basics were, but this is why the whole thing started. And it's gotten, I think it's gotten much better. Production value's better, lighting's better, backgrounds are better, sounds better, cameras better, everything's better. And I hope to even get better at it than that. One day maybe in a studio or something. So the 5 pillars to the No Limits podcast: getting over limitations, which you all have the ability to do. You just got to start thinking the right way. You got to start seeing yourself doing what you want to do. And as you do that, last week I had a what if podcast. If you start asking your questions, what if, start visualizing what it looks like to be in that position, how you'd walk, how you'd talk, how you'd spend the money if you made more money, how you'd act if you lost weight, how you, whatever the thing is, you got to really visualize that. And that's that getting over limitations. You got to get your story right, man. You got to, when you're out there, especially salespeople, and you're out there telling your story about how you got to where you were or are, or how the company progressed and why they're in the situation they're in. Find out those stories and listen to other people's stories. That's really important too, especially as a salesperson, to listen. There's a lot of times we can learn from other people how they handle situations. Advice advice is good. I'm not super good at taking advice. I'm not super good at taking criticism either, but I take it. I do what I do with it. There's reasons why sometimes it doesn't mean anything to me because I might have been down that road already and I don't want to explain it to the person. But listen, I have ideas that people just look at me and like, how are you going to make any money doing that? Well, other people are doing it, so there's no reason I can't. They just don't, they're just not in that mindset, which is fine. They don't have to be. Self-esteem, man, this is imperative. It's paramount to your success in any part of your life. I don't know, and the thing is I can't tell you what to do to increase your self-esteem. But you have to. I mean, if whether it's doing mantras, whether it's working out, whether it's walking, whether it's getting to the beach, whether it's just breathing, maybe you just need some alone time. Maybe I can tell you that when I kind of semi-meditate, I put piano music on. Piano music makes me just brings my heartbeat way down, and I can relax with piano music. I don't know what it's going to take. I can tell you you're valued, and I can tell you you're worth it, and you're worthy of anything you want to have. Anybody is, and I just your self-esteem is kind of central to everything that's going to happen. And because because you're going to tell yourself you can or you can't do it, and it goes back to the limitations and telling that story. Excuses. You got to stop with the excuses. And I'm talking to myself more than anybody here in the mirror. You have to. So when I'm doing this podcast, I can see myself on the camera. And there's times I'll say things, oh, excuse me, and I'm looking at myself going, I'm talking to myself. I know I want you to hear it, but it irritates me that I'm having to tell myself not to make excuses because I do it all the time and I need to stop. It just prolongs things. It just puts stuff off. The fact is once I get to the gym and I get home, or I go to church on Sunday and I get home, I never feel like I wasn't productive, right? Even if I had a crappy workout is better than no workout. And we go to mass every Sunday, and whether I can understand the priest or not, I get something out of the mass. There's a grace you get when you're at the mass. I'm not going to get into that, but that's kind of a Catholic thing. And the last thing is dealing with trauma. I know you have it. I know you've had it, or you're having it, or you're going to have more. It's just life. We need to separate that out, compartmentalize that thought, that trauma, and get our business done, right? And get to the gym and make that deal and, get that deadline taken care of. The trauma will not go away. Got news for you. People say, oh, you got to forget the past. I'll never forget my mom or my dad or my grandkids. or anybody that I've lost or anything that's happened, it's all been a learning experience. And yes, I don't want to dwell on the past and the negative, the negative connotation. Oh, excuse me, but I do want to remember that it happened and I had to overcome whatever happened at that point. Listen, use the fact that you overcame that trauma to propel you into the future, to show, to look at yourself. It's funny. People say, well, I can't start a business. I've never done this or that. Of course you have. You know how to use a computer. You've been using a computer for 20 years. You know how to sell. You know how to do this. You know how to do that. You're not starting from scratch. You're not 16 and having to learn everything. You've already had this life where you've learned a lot of these principles and skills that you can apply to whatever business you want to do or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a business, but whatever you want to do. I go to the gym. When I'm at the gym, I see people, and not that I'm any kind of expert, believe me, I see people doing exercises that are not benefiting them the way they want them to benefit them. And it's so easy to go online or to go, on your phone or whatever and find out a correct way to do an exercise. So you're not wasting time. There's one guy in particular who does these exercises and he's using his shoulders when he's doing his arms. Well, he's going to hurt his shoulder or he's not going to get a benefit for his arms. There's other exercises to do for your shoulders. There's other exercises to do for your arm. I'm not going to get into that. But the whole point to me, I'm telling you, is there's all these ways to learn. And now with AI, there's even more quicker ways to learn. Is it always perfect? No, of course not. But it gives you great information. So listen, I appreciate you listening to my podcast. Please, please, please share this podcast. Whether you like it or not, whether you like me or not, if you see it, just hit the share button. That's all you got to do. It'll go out to the people and then they may want to watch it. If you go to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. I put all these out, all these podcasts now. If you've noticed, they come out in clips, 30 seconds, a minute. Listen to one of those. Just listen to one. I know that if you don't listen to this, you're not going to get this message, but I'll put it on social media and just take you 30 seconds of your life to listen to see if I say something that resonates with you. So I appreciate you all. I hope you kind of get the point of what my podcast is about. And I want to grow that. So if you, like I said, if you have a guest that could add to my podcast, that could be would be beneficial to me, I'm open to any suggestions. You can reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. You can go to any of my social media platforms and send me a direct message. And please, like I said, share anything, anytime you can. And I will see you all next week with a new topic. And hopefully it'll be something that resonates with you. Have a great weekend. We're here in June already. And I'll talk to you all very soon.